Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. Super excited to be with you tonight because we are talking about a topic that I know I get so many questions asked, and I know it's one that you guys want to talk about. So tonight we're going to be talking all about rolling out small groups. So make sure to grab a comfy seat, grab a drink, and stay tuned because we have a jam-packed episode and a great freebie for you to grab at the end of the video. As always, at the end of the video, I will post the link to the freebie in the video description and in the comments. So make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end so you can grab that. And I'll show you what that is in a little bit. So anyways, welcome, welcome, welcome. Come and join me. My name is Sierra Harris. I am the author behind Sierra Harris Teaching, and I absolutely love coming to you every single week to talk about all things comprehension. So tonight's topic can, in fact, span outside of the realm of comprehension and reading. It does, in fact, apply to math and science and kind of any subject that you want to have small groups or centers in. And the information we talk about tonight, some of it may not be brand new. Some of it may be great reminders and things to reflect on. Some of it may be new information. Some of it may be things you've never thought about. So you're going to be able to take away from this video what you need to take away from this video. So just think about your current status in rolling out small groups, how comfortable you feel, how well they went last year, and what changes you think you need to make as you're rolling them out to make them better for you, for your students, and for the whole calendar year, right? All right, so if you haven't done so already, make sure to drop me a comment and let me know that you're here and listening. Let me know what grade you teach, where you're from, and let me know what your biggest hiccup is when it comes to rolling out small groups. So when I say small groups, I do mean things like reading centers, stations, whatever you like to call them, reading rotation, guided reading stations. I mean, it's the same, same beast with just lots of different names. But the important is, and what we're going to be talking about tonight, is what you do before you launch. So before you actually go into doing them, what do you need to do prior to that to make your launch successful? All right? So I want you to think about this for me. I want you to think about this scenario. Let's say it's the second day of school and you decided you want to start reading groups. Oh, can you feel the tension? Can you feel the, oh my gosh, I would never do that. Oh my gosh, there'd be so many problems, right? So that right there, that craziness is what I always tell my teachers I want you to think about. I want you to think about trying centers on the second day of school, and I want you to write down all of those potential problems. Because all of those potential problems are things that you will need to address during your rollout. All those weeks ahead of you launching your small groups, all of those problems need to be addressed. And that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight, are all the different aspects in which, how should I teach my students to be successful when we're doing small groups, okay? So all that chaos, all of that stress that you would feel, sorry about that, if you were to do them on the second day of school, that's what you need to think about. And that way you can pre-teach that stuff so it doesn't happen regardless of when your launch is, okay? So scary scenario to think about, but it's one that I absolutely believe helps when it comes to identifying even the smallest of components that we need to make sure we teach and discuss with our kids during our small group rollout, all right? So your freebie tonight is going to be a great one, and it's going to be one that you can personalize for you, one that you can write on and make a plan for yourself. It's what I call the small group rollout plan. And you can see here, it's just a blank calendar, and I believe it has 5 weeks on it. And what you're going to do, and I'll explain this more in detail at the end of the video, but what you're going to do is you're going to be able to take everything that we talk about tonight, and you're going to be putting it into a calendar plan to then use to help roll out your small groups. So again, I'll talk about this more in detail at the very end of the video, and the links will be posted at the end as well. You're going to be able to use that to personalize how you use your small group rollout plan. The information that you learn and we talk about tonight, you're going to be able to put that into the plan to make it work for you, okay? All right, so the first thing that I want you to think about is your launch date. So personally, I never started small groups until after Labor Day. Now that meant we were in school a minimum of at least 4 weeks, all of August. We always went back in July, very late July, which meant I had the days in July plus all of August, and then we started small groups in September, right after Labor Day. Obviously, that would depend on when you go back. I would recommend having a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks for your rollout plan. I know that's a lot of time, right? But that's not a lot of time when you think about this whole calendar year. I want my kids to be successful, independent, engaged, and on task the whole calendar year when it comes to reading stations, right? When it comes to small groups. So taking 3 to 4 weeks to get there is not that big of a deal. I'm not losing instruction. I'm setting a foundation in place for success all year long and for their next teacher, hopefully, right? They remember a lot of the great things that I've taught them, and the next year teacher will benefit a little bit from that as well. But think about your launch date, because what you're going to end up doing with your freebie tonight is you're going to work backwards. You're going to plan your launch date, and then you're going to fill in backwards from there all of the pieces and things that you think you need to teach and cover and discuss with your students in order to roll out small groups successfully. So you want to know that launch date, that way you know how many weeks you need available. If you're only going to use 3 weeks to roll out, and then your launch date is going to be on day 1 of week 4, then you don't need one of these weeks. So you need to know what your launch date is. You need to know how many weeks you plan on taking to roll out small groups to be able to do this for you, the correct way. So maybe after hearing some of the information we're going to be talking about tonight, you'll have a better idea of maybe when you want to launch your small groups. But again, I highly recommend at least 3 to 4 weeks of rollout prior to launching. So if you are a school maybe in the Northeast that doesn't start school until after Labor Day, you may not start centers until October. And again, that's fine. So all the things we're going to be talking about tonight are going to help you make sure that you have all your I's dotted, all your T's crossed, and students are going to know without a shadow of a doubt exactly what you expect and what to do in your stations, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. And just FYI on your freebie, all of the components we're going to be talking about tonight are off to the side. However, we're going to be breaking those down even more. So if you are a note taker, we are going to be kind of diving into each piece deeper than what your freebie shows. So there's going to be more information than what's on your freebie. So just want to pre-warn you about that. That way, if you want to make sure you take notes or jot things down, that you want to cover some aha moments in each piece, that may be something that you want to do. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to break down each of these, oh gosh, I don't even know how many there are, 12-ish components of rolling out small groups successfully. So I've got like 12-ish things that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to break each one of those down to make sure we understand what it is that I need to be teaching in that component, okay? So let's start. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is a duh, but it's transitions, right? I know that you all teach transitions in your classroom, or we should be. But at the beginning of the year, we're teaching, students how to transition to the door, how to walk around the room, what's acceptable and what's not. However, we need to make sure that when we're rolling out our small groups, that we also discuss transitions for small group rollout. Because small group transitions are different than our regular transitions to and from the door and around the room, okay? So for example, you're going to want to talk to your kids about how to transition from their desk to their small group area and back, right? You're going to want to make sure you talk about what pattern they need to move in. So if you actually have rotations, show them the flow, the path that they need to be taking. You don't want to have a student go from the corner of the room and their next station is the next corner of the room, and they're going all the way across and around to get there, right? There's no point. That's wasting time. We're crossing people, probably talking to people we shouldn't be. It depends on, what level of you have in your classroom. I don't know what word to put to that, but yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. But just making sure the kids know what pattern to move in. Also talking about what's the shortest path. Why are we taking a long path when you need to take the shortest path and get right to work? Time is money, and in school, money is knowledge, and we need to make sure we're spending all of our time with our knowledge, meaning what we're supposed to be doing. All right? That was a really long-winded analogy. Maybe don't use that. But you know what I'm trying to say. So making sure the students know the path, making sure they know to take the shortest path, and being very explicit with that. The more explicit we can be when talking about transitions, specifically with our small group rollout, then the less they're going to question you or try you when launch happens. So be very explicit. Also, talk about timing, right? Practice timing, students, walking around. If you know where your stations are going to be, practice standing up and rotating and sitting down. How long did that take us? 10 seconds. So should it take us any longer when we're actually doing centers? No. So show your students that there really is no reason for transitions to be an issue when it comes to small groups. No reason. I always use the word short and sweet. Your transition should be short and sweet, right? That's it. And also make sure, finally, to model your transitions the right way and the wrong way. So when we're thinking about stations, model the wrong way. Model, having students, take the longest path, or model having students, dropping papers along the way and then having to run back and pick them up, and then talking to a student and then running to pick up, the pen that they forgot, and oh my gosh, and show them the wrong way. And you know what? Have fun with it. Kids are going to laugh, but they're going to have a very clear expectation of what you want when it comes to transitions, right? There's not going to be a gray area. It's going to be very black and white, which is what they want and what they need to make this successful. So again, I know transitions were a duh, but maybe there were some aha moments in there when we broke that down that maybe you hadn't thought of when it comes to teaching transitions for small group rollout. So transitions are important, and we're going to move on from there. All right. The next one is expectations. So obviously we need to teach our expectations when we're talking about small groups. Now, expectations is a very broad term, so there's a lot of different components that kind of go into that as well, okay? So one of the things I would encourage you to do is have a visual. Have some kind of anchor chart that you make with your students that lays out all of small group expectations. Because you may have expectations for the classroom, but you need to have specific expectations for when you're in centers, all right? They should be different. Now, there may be some overlap, and that's okay, but think about like your volume level, respect for materials. What are they supposed to do when they have a question when they're in small groups? That's different if they have a question in a whole group, they raise their hand. Is that really what you want them to do when they're in small groups? So there's different things that may that may happen and come up. So you want to make sure that you're laying out all of your expectations differently and aside from your whole group expectations, and have that visual, okay? This is going to be something that you go over every single day, the entire month or weeks that you are rolling out small groups. So this is one of the first things that I would do, is set up these expectations, because as we go and practice all of the other little things for small group rollout, every day we're going to start with expectations. And it's going to be drilled into them. You want that memory. You want that muscle memory embedded into your students, so that way they know that on day 5 or week 5, when it's launch time, I don't have to be like, who remembers our expectations we went over 3 weeks ago? I'm going over them every single day. Anytime I'm talking about small group, that's what I start with, okay? Because we want them to be independent, right? And that's the goal, all right? Another thing you want to think about when it comes to expectations are your collaboration expectations. So how do I teach my students to collaborate with one another? What are my expectations there, right? Are we teaching them what it means to collaborate? Are we teaching them what it means to talk to each other? Have I told them or taught them how to ask questions? Have I taught them how to give feedback, right? If someone's doing something in my small group, we're playing a game and they're doing something incorrectly, how do I teach them to give feedback in a positive way? Have I taught them how to agree and how to disagree? Those are things that students don't necessarily know how to do naturally in an academic setting. Therefore, they need to be taught. And so if you're wanting students to do things together when it comes to small group rotations, then you're going to need to make sure you teach them ahead of time all of those components. On top of that, problem-solving skills. Problem-solving skills are huge when it comes to small groups. Making sure that I am explicitly explaining to them how to solve potential problems that will come up. And that's a part of expectations, because I expect you to solve a problem in this way, or to solve these problems this way and these problems this way. So making sure I spend a day or a lesson in my small group rollout, and all we're going to talk about for that one day, I can't point to the square, one day is problem solving skills, right? And I want to make sure that I have given my students a chance to understand that they have the power to solve problems, that there's a right way and a wrong way to solve problems. And when problems aren't being solved the right way, then what do I do, right? All of this is going to lay out a solid groundwork for you to be able to have centers go smoothly the day you decide to launch, okay? So expectations is a big umbrella. Like I mentioned, break that down and make sure you're covering all aspects of expectations, okay? All right, the next component I want to talk about is workload. So workload. What are the kids expected to do in their centers? So make sure before you launch, you are explaining to them what they're doing and why they are doing it. Do you expect them to do like a must do or a may do? Maybe that's something that you're having them do in their stations. Do they know what to do when they get frustrated during their workload? Right? Maybe at the beginning of the year you're doing review skills and they don't understand, or you're putting out new content in the stations and they don't understand, right? What do they do if they get frustrated? Because I'm not expecting you to have everything memorized, right? I'm expecting you to know what to do though when you do get frustrated. And make sure too to explain the schedule to students. So I know all of you have very, very different ways to communicate what's going on in reading stations. You may have a bulletin board, maybe you have a digital rotation center, some sort of poster that you make, but there needs to be some kind of visual that students can go off of and use to know where they're going to go for each station. That visual needs to be thought of way ahead of time, because you want to use that visual to then teach your students how to use it, right? You don't want it to be day one and you're pulling up this really cool digital rotation board that you found and you're having to go, okay, you guys, do you see your name? And then 15 kids don't see their names. And then, okay, and once everyone found your name, okay, so now look across and do you see where you're going for which station? That all needs time, right? It makes sense in our brains because we made it. We designed it. It doesn't make sense in their brains. We have to give them time to understand it. So having all those visuals ready ahead of time and then taking time in our small group rollout to actually teach them how to use it. All right, let's practice our transitions. Let's go to our desk. Let's look at our board. Let's pretend it's Tuesday, station 2. Ready, go. And have them look at the board, Tuesday, station 2, find their name, know what to do, know where to go, transition the way you want them to transition, and boom. And then give them feedback. You know, how did we do? Did it take us too long? Were we loud during the transition? Did we forget our materials? You know, give them feedback and let them process what just happened. You know, we can't throw them into the deep end and then expect them to be able to swim completely independently without having swimming lessons, right? I'm all about the analogies today. I don't know why. But it's really important that we do that. Also, as a little side note, when you're thinking about your stations and your centers and when you're creating this visual for students to think about, this is also a really good time to reflect yourself on what you're actually having your students do in the stations and really think about, is it worth it, right? There is so much research out there that shows what readers really need to be doing in school. And guys, it points back to reading. Kids need to read. So, and as someone who has task cards in their TBT store, it must be pretty important to hear me say, sometimes the task cards are just not going to cut it, right? Sometimes that Lakeshore learning game is just not what they need. Really think about what you're having kids do in each station and think about it. Is it worth it? Is it worth your time? Is it worth their time? And really reflect on what's happening and make it the best it could possibly be. All right, so that is workload. Okay, the next point that I want to talk about tonight is your job. Yes, your job. What are you doing? And why should we talk about that during small group rollout? Well, because if you want kids to see the whole picture, then you need to make sure that they know you have a job and that you aren't just going to be sitting at your desk eating bonbons and twiddling your thumbs. You're not going to be walking around and monitoring them. You have a job to do as well. And when students understand that, then they're going to be able to respect the process a lot more. So make sure we explain to them what you're doing. When you're clear with this, not only are they going to respect it more, but they're also going to hold you accountable, right? They're going to be there to hold you accountable to say, Mrs. Harris, you should be at the small group table, not getting another drink out of your fridge. That's not the time to be getting a drink out of your fridge. Now is the time to be sitting at the small group table with the group that you have waiting on you, right? Let your kids hold you accountable if you need it. So be very clear with them during your small group rollout with what your job is. Let them know that I'm holding you to high standards. You need to hold me to high standards as well, right? And to make sure too that when it's time for your job at that small group table, that you get started right away, right? And teach how are kids supposed to approach you. When I'm sitting at the small group table and there's an issue going on that a student needs me to help with them, how are they supposed to approach me? I know that a lot of teachers out there have, those really the cute posters that say like, don't talk to me unless, you're vomiting, you're bleeding, you're on fire, or, this certain celebrity walks into the room. That's funny and that's great. And that's fine. But make sure that they know, when actually it is okay to approach you because maybe they do have a potential problem that needs to be addressed. Some teachers like to wear like a little tiara or a funny hat when they're at their small group table to show that they're off limits. If that's a signal you want to do, then that's great. But small group rollout is the time to teach all of that, right? So it's very important to communicate what your job is and what their job is. You can even do a T-chart. This is one of the things I love doing with my kids too during small group rollout is in this lesson, I make a T-chart. These are the things that we expect of you. These are the things that you expect of me. This is my job. This is your job. This is how stations are going to work. If we want it to work and we want to have fun, this is what we have to do. So again, it's all about being very clear and concise and communicating everything that you can to your students to make it successful. All right, another element or component that I want to talk about tonight is accountability, right? We want to make sure that we're holding students accountable for what they're doing in their small groups. But we also want to make sure that we have a level of trust, right? I should be able to trust my students to know that when they're independent, that they should be doing what they're doing. So from the get-go, tell your students that you trust them and then actually follow through with that, right? You should trust your students until you have reason not to. Also, if you think you're going to have students who are not trustworthy, meaning they're not going to do what you expect of them, then make sure you give them something in that station that's going to engage them where they are not going to have an option. They're going to want to do it. Whether it be a choice reading, let them read what they want. And if that is something that they want to do, they're going to do it. So it's all about just finding what works for your students, right? So you don't have to have a piece of paper or a tracker for every little thing you do. It's all about communication and trust with your kids, right? And also, during this small group rollout, take time, or one of your little lessons in here should be about accountability. Have that discussion with them. At each of these stations, how do you think I'm going to hold you accountable? How can you show me or prove to me that you are doing your work? Have those discussions. When you're in, if it's independent reading, how can I hold you accountable for that? How is that going to look on my end? How will that look on your end? If they know that you're looking for accountability in a variety of ways in all of your stations that you have planned out, if they know there's accountability, then they're more apt to actually do the work too. So it's all about having that discussion. Okay. If you do have papers, obviously, that they will be doing, this is a great time to talk about your expectations on where are the turn-in trays? What do you expect of them in their reader's notebook? If you're holding them accountable in a notebook, what are your expectations in that notebook? Make sure you actually show them physical examples of what you expect. Okay. Try not to make any gray area, basically, is this whole thing. Be explicit. Okay. How are you going to check in on your students? How do they know that you are going to hold them accountable? So think through that and then have a talk with your kids about it. All right, so the next component is objectives. And I think this one is very important for two reasons. One, for the teacher to have pre-thought through really what they want going on in their reading stations or their math stations. Again, this could go for math or any other subject. But what do you want happening in your stations? And it's great for the teacher really to make sure that what's going on is valuable for both the teacher and the student. But then two, knowing the objectives ahead of time and communicating those with your students allows the students to understand the reason why they're there, right? If we want students to buy in, then we have to give them reasons to buy in. So one of the things I do is make sure I know what the objectives are for each station. For example, you may have a station that's all about response to reading. Maybe they've got a reader's notebook, maybe they're using their choice text, and then maybe you pose a question. So every time they're at that station, it's always going to be about response to text. So during my small group rollout, I'm explaining to them that objective. This is what you will be working on all year, response to text, okay? Here is why. Here's why we're practicing this. Here's what I expect from you. Here's what I want you to do and do not do in this station. Here are the materials that you need for, it all kind of wraps it up into a big bow, but it explains to the student that there's a reason why we're doing this, okay? It keeps the routine and it helps lower anxiety, right? I'm not having to spend Monday morning explaining brand new stations to everyone, right? They know that when they go to this corner, we're going to be working on comprehension. They know that when they go to this corner, we're going to be working on responding to text. They know that when we go to this corner, they're going to be doing independent reading or whatever it ends up being. They need to know ahead of time, and there needs to be an overarching objective. Now, the material and the activity can change, right? I could have, again, a lakeshore game in that station one week, and then the next week there be, with task cards, and then the next week there be maybe some kind of tablet game or whatever. But the overarching objective is comprehension. And so I want to make sure that my students know, yes, the activity may change, but here you're working on comprehension. So that's what you need to expect when you're there. Okay, it's going to become more valuable. The students are going to buy in more, and you're able ahead of time to clearly communicate all of that with your students so they know what to expect. All right, I'm going to try to go through these next few a little quicker because I don't want to make sure you're not here all night. But the next component is materials. Obviously, you need to take time and talk about your materials. Even in the higher grades, talk about materials, right? How do we respect materials? Where do you get materials? How do you put your materials away? How will your materials be stored? If you have things in containers, what does it look like inside and how do they all fit? Maybe you need to take a picture and then post it on the outside of the container so students know how to fit things in. You don't want them playing Tetris with your materials. That's how things get broken and lost. So from the get-go, take time to show them, practice, and explain. Also, what do you do with materials between rotations? Do they need to clean everything up, right? Or are you just going to be like, okay, it's time to rotate, and they just leave everything right there and move on, and the next group comes, kind of brings it all together and decides then what they're doing with it. So that's something to think about in practice. At the end of the center, what do you want them to do with those materials? So materials is really important to make sure you have time to talk about not just once, but multiple times, and also practice that. Another area to think about is your early finisher. All right, this is why I love the must do, may do. I always give my kids a must do activity that took them maybe 10, maybe 15 minutes tops, and the rest of the time was theirs. They had choices. They could do the more, I don't want to say the more fun things, because the must do stuff was fun too. But they had choices. They could independently read, they could write in their journal, they could play, a game, or whatever you want your choices to be. But having that must do, may do kind of eliminated the early finisher need. But if that's not a route that you want to go, that's perfectly fine. Make sure, though, that you're communicating with your students what early finisher expectations are. When you're done, there should not be any, I don't know what to do now, or Mrs. Harris, what do I do now? You should know what to do, and I expect you to do that, right? So make sure they know what their options are. Have a visual. I always had a visual of what our early finishers options were. That was before I did must do, may do. But have a visual for them. That way, if they do forget, all you have to do is point. Right there. You don't ask me. It's on the board. Also, this includes student choice and voice, which is great for engagement. And you can even differentiate. Maybe you have, if they're in a small group, monkeys, they're in the monkey group, you would say, here are your monkey early finishers. Here are your lion early finishers, and here are your zebra early finishers. So you can even differentiate the early finishers in a very simple way. But this is something, again, that you need to pre-think about and that you need to teach during your small group rollout. All right, this one's my favorite. I love this one. Make sure to take time to talk about what ifs. I hate what if questions. Hate them. Hate them when my own kids ask them. I hate them. Stop asking what if questions, because they're thinking about scenarios that probably will never happen, and I don't want to spend the time doing it. However, there are what if questions that are valid, right? So taking some time to talk with your kids and focus on what if questions is a great way to ease some of their anxiety, to get questions answered that maybe you hadn't even thought of. And I always like to pre-think my own what if questions. For example, what if a student is absent? What do they do? What if we have a short week? What are our rotations going to look like? Right? So have a what if day. I usually did my what if day pretty close to launch. So if my launch date was down here, then my what if date was going to be, like right here, right before launch. Just so we can kind of get out any more clarifying questions that we needed to. And then any of those ridiculous questions. But I want my kids to ask questions. So I try hard not to dismiss any questions. Even if they are what if, and even if they are ridiculous, every question has validity. So we want to make sure that we're giving students a chance to ask questions. So why not doing and have a what if day? And tell your kids ahead of time, tomorrow's going to be our what if day. I want you to think about everything we've learned about stations and centers. And I want you to come up with as many what if questions as you can. And you don't even have to just focus on what if questions. You can do other questions too. But what if questions are a great way to make sure your kids get those out of their system. Because believe me, they're in their system, right? So have a what if day. All right, my last piece is to talk about digital content. And by digital content, I mean any kind of computer or tablet-based programs that you will have students do during small groups. Make sure you're taking time to really dig in to the why behind the digital content. Take a day and talk about what they're doing. What do you expect on the digital content? How are you going to hold them accountable on the digital content? Why are they on the digital content? Like, it should not just be, oh, we're going to do Lexia, here's your login, let's go. There should be a whole day. A lot of the times, your digital content platforms like Lexia and RazKids or Epic or all of those, they have made videos for you to use in your classroom to show kids. Use them. It's fantastic, right? You don't even have to do the talking. Let the program do the talking. But take some time to talk about these programs before you just throw your kids on them. That way there's buy-in. They know that I'm on this program to meet this goal. I am on this program to become a better reader, to become better at phonics, to become a better whatever the program is, match that with their buy, okay? So have a lesson or two at the beginning of the year during your rollout to make sure you cover all of your digital content and really talk about what it is. Why should we respect it? Why are we on it? Because it will help in the future to make sure that your kids understand all of that. Okay? All right, on your freebie tonight, we went through all of these pieces right here. I did leave a few of the dots blank. That way, if there are other aspects that I didn't cover tonight or that you think of, that you can add them in. But what your homework is to download your freebie and first, again, find your launch date. When do you expect to start small groups? Again, my recommendation is at least 3 to 4 weeks of rollout, and then you can start your actual centers where you're pulling kids and kids are doing activities. So figure out when your launch date is and then work backwards. And then every single one of these dates, you're going to put in something that you're going to teach. I'm going to teach transitions on these 2 days. Then the next 3 days, we're going to go over expectations. Then the next day, we're going to talk about accountability, then objectives, and then you're going to fill in these weeks really fast, right? And then the big question I always get, well, when am I actually going to teach all this? I don't have time in my day. Well, let's see. If you have time in your day to actually do the stations later on, then you do have time in your day to teach the stations. You teach the how when at the time that you would actually be doing it. So if in your 90-minute or hour or whatever reading block that you have, if you have 30 minutes where you know in the future you're going to do stations, then that's the same 30 minutes that you use every day to teach how to do the stations. So you do have the time for it, right? It's just being intentional about using it. So you have homework. I want you to download that freebie. I want you to print it off or use a digital version of it if you want to. I want you to find your launch date, and I want you to think about all of the different aspects that we covered tonight. Break them down and write them in, okay? Write them in and get your calendar filled. That way you have a successful small group rollout plan. And make it applicable to you, make it applicable to your kids, okay? So that's what I want you to do. And I would absolutely love to see pictures. So when you're done, come back to this video and comment with a picture or email me a picture of your small group rollout plan. If you want advice or feedback on it, I'm happy to do that as well. So there's no right or wrong answer here. It's all about knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your clientele with your students, and knowing what they're going to need. I know it's a new batch of students, but I mean, you know your community, so you know what the needs are typically, and putting all those pieces together and making your small group rollout plan work for you. But if you take anything away from our video tonight, it's this. We cannot jump in to the deep end without having swimming lessons first. And so they're going to need a few weeks of swimming lessons before you are able to give that green light and give that go and then not have problems. If you can do it this way and make sure that you are setting your kids up for success during launch date, you're going to be able to sit back and go, oh my gosh, this is actually working. And the thing is, it's not going to work just for that first week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's going to work the whole year, because what you have done, instead of just teaching them how to do it, you have ingrained it into them. You have taken 3 to 4 weeks to make it a habit and a routine for your classroom, instead of just slapping on some expectations and going with it and it working for a few weeks and then, it kind of dies down. It's not gonna. Now, that doesn't mean you won't have behavior issues. You're not gonna have little things that pop up. We all do. The best of teachers do. But you're going to have a system in place that is amazing, and it's going to be amazing because you took time to make it amazing. All right. If you have any questions, I'm absolutely happy to answer all of them. Just make sure you comment below. I'm going to go back through the video and answer all of them individually. Or you can always email me, Sierra@SierraHarrisTeaching.com. And I'm happy to help answer questions there as well. So hopefully you got a little bit of information tonight that's helping you in the upcoming year or years on your small group rollout plan. Again, some of it may have been review, some of it may be brand new. Hopefully I gave you some aha moments and things to think about, but take away what you can from the video and apply it to make your classroom the best it can be. All right, so I will see you all next week for another episode in Adventures of Comprehension. Bye, friends.